The station shuddered again. This time the vibration lasted longer and Jiwoo could hear metal groaning somewhere in the walls. Her datapad was flashing with multiple emergency messages. She scanned them quickly. The cosmic storm was much worse than predicted. All adult Talkir were being recalled to their ships immediately. Something about their biology made them vulnerable to the electromagnetic interference. That meant Jiwoo was alone with the cubs. "Listen to me," she said, keeping her voice steady. "We need to go to the nursery wing. It's the safest part of the station during storms. Can you follow me?" Tovan looked like he wanted to argue, but another shudder ran through the floor. Rika pressed herself against Sevik. Both younger cubs were breathing fast, their chests rising and falling rapidly. "Follow," Tovan said to the others. Then to Jiwoo, "We go, but we do not run from danger." "We're not running. We're being smart." Jiwoo moved to the door and checked the corridor. Emergency lighting had activated, casting everything in dim red. This way, they moved through the corridors quickly. The cubs stayed close together, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. Jiwoo noticed how they moved, always ready to fight or flee. When they passed other beings evacuating to their designated areas, the cubs' muscles tensed and their claws extended slightly. The nursery wing was designed to withstand almost anything. Thick walls, independent life support, and emergency power systems that could last for weeks. Jiwoo placed her hand on the security panel and the door slid open. She ushered the cubs inside. The room was larger than her classroom, with soft surfaces and adjustable lighting. There were sleep pods designed for different species, storage units with supplies, and one wall covered in displays that could show anything from educational content to calming nature scenes. "This is where young ones come during emergencies," Jiwoo explained. She checked the control panel. All systems were functioning. They had air, power, and water. "We'll be safe here." The storm hit harder. The lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in after 5 seconds, but those 5 seconds in total darkness felt much longer. Jiwoo heard the cubs moving, heard their claws scraping on the floor as they repositioned themselves. When the lights came back, all 3 cubs were huddled in the corner farthest from the door. They had formed a defensive triangle, each watching a different direction. Rika was in the middle, the 2 males on either side of her. "Hey," Jiwoo said softly. "It's just a storm. The station is strong. We're going to be fine." "Talkir do not fear storms," Tovan said. But he didn't move from the corner. Jiwoo's datapad buzzed. A message from Hyun appeared. "All other species young have been evacuated. Talkir cubs cannot use the transport system due to their sensitivity to the EM fields. You're authorized to stay with them.
Keep them calm."
The storm should pass in 12 to 15 hours. 12 to 15 hours. Jiwoo looked at the cubs in the corner. They were trying so hard to appear brave, but their bodies told a different story. Their ears kept swiveling toward every sound. Their tails were low. Rika was trembling slightly. The station groaned again, a deep metallic sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. This time, Sevik made a small sound in his throat. Tovan immediately growled at him and Sevik went silent. "You know what I do when I'm scared?" Jiwoo said. She sat down on the floor, making herself smaller and less threatening. "I tell myself stories. Stories about brave people who faced scary things." "We are not scared," Tovan insisted. "Okay, but would you like to hear a story anyway?" Rika spoke for the first time since entering the nursery. Her voice was small. "What kind of story?" "A true story. About humans who lived a long time ago, before we had stations like this or ships that could travel between stars." The lights flickered again. In the corner, Rika pressed closer to her brothers. But she was listening. "There was a time when humans lived on Earth and had to face animals that wanted to eat them," Jiwoo began. "Big animals with sharp teeth and claws, animals much stronger than any human. How did they survive?" Sevik asked. "They learned to work together, and they learned to use fire. Fire scared away the predators at night. One person would stay awake to keep the fire burning while the others slept. They took turns protecting each other." Another shudder ran through the station. This one was stronger. The emergency lights dimmed for a moment. Jiwoo stood up and went to the control panel, adjusting the lighting to a warmer, brighter setting. The cub's eyes tracked her movement. "Why are you making the lights brighter?" Tovan asked. "Because light helps when things are dark and scary," Jiwoo said simply. She moved to one of the storage units and pulled out a physical book. It was old-fashioned, with actual paper pages. She'd brought it from Earth. My mother used to read to me from this book when I was frightened. The cubs watched as she sat down again, this time a bit closer to them. She opened the book carefully. The pages showed pictures of animals and humans together. "This is a story about a human child who befriended a wolf," Jiwoo said. She began to read. The storm grew worse outside. The hull groaned and creaked. Emergency alerts kept flashing on her datapad, but Jiwoo ignored them. She kept reading. Her voice stayed calm and steady, even when the station shook so hard that equipment rattled against the walls. Slowly, very slowly, the cubs began to relax. Rika was the first to move closer. She crept forward, her eyes on the book. The pictures seemed to fascinate her. "The wolf was bigger than the child?" she asked. "Much bigger, but they became friends anyway." "Why would a predator not eat prey?" Tovan asked. He hadn't moved from the corner, but he was leaning forward now, trying to see the pictures. "Because sometimes friendship is more valuable than food," Jiwoo said. The wolf and the child helped each other survive. The child shared food. The wolf warned them about danger. They were stronger together. Sevik moved next, sliding forward on his belly until he was close enough to see the book clearly. "Do you have more stories?" "I have lots of stories." Jiwoo read for hours. She told them about humans who climbed the highest mountains just to see what was at the top, about sailors who crossed vast oceans on wooden boats not knowing what they would find, about scientists who went into dangerous places to learn about the animals that lived there. Between stories, when the station shook especially hard, she would stop and check on them. "Still doing okay?" The cubs would nod, though their eyes were wide. Daehyun's voice came through the communication system. He was a security officer monitoring the station. "Jiwoo, you should know there's been a hull breach in Sector 7. We've sealed it off, but the storm is stronger than we predicted. Are you and the cubs secure?" "We're secure," Jiwoo replied. "How long until the storm passes?" "Another 8 hours, maybe more." "Can you hold out?" "Yes, we're fine here." But when she looked at the cubs, she could see they'd heard the fear in Daehyun's voice. They understood more human language than she'd realized. The alarm blared suddenly, loud and sharp. All 3 cubs leaped to their feet, claws extended, teeth bared. They spun toward the door, ready to fight whatever was coming. "It's okay," Jiwoo said quickly. She moved to the control panel and lowered the alarm volume. "It's just a warning system. No one is attacking. We're safe." But the cubs were breathing hard now, their predator instincts fully activated. They couldn't seem to calm down. Rika was making small, distressed sounds. Sevik was pacing back and forth. Tovan stood rigid, every muscle tight. Jiwoo did something she hadn't done in years. She began to sing. It was a lullaby her mother had sung to her during thunderstorms when she was small. The words were in Korean, soft and melodic. She didn't have a good voice, but the tune was gentle and repetitive. The cubs froze. They stared at her with expressions of complete confusion. Their ears swiveled forward, capturing every note. Jiwoo kept singing, the same verse over and over, her voice steady and calm. She sat back down with the book in her lap and sang while the storm raged outside. Rika was the first to sit down. She folded her legs beneath her and watched Jiwoo with tilted head, listening to the strange sounds coming from the human's throat. After a moment, Sevik joined his sister. Only Tovan remained standing, but even he had stopped pacing. Jiwoo let the song fade away naturally. The storm was still raging, but inside the nursery, a strange calm had settled over them all. "What was that sound you made?" Rika asked. "A song, music. Do your people have music?" The cubs looked at each other. Tovan spoke slowly. "We have battle chants, war drums, but not sounds like that." "Music can be many things," Jiwoo said. "It can make you want to fight, or it can make you feel peaceful. My mother sang that song to me when I was afraid of thunder." "You fear thunder?" Tavan's voice carried judgment. "Thunder cannot hurt you. I was very young. I didn't understand that yet. I just knew it was loud and scary." Jiwoo met his eyes. "Being afraid doesn't make you weak. It means you understand danger." "Talkir warriors do not show fear," Tovan said. But he said it like he was reciting a lesson, not like he believed it. The station lurched violently. This time something in the walls made a sharp cracking sound. The lights went out completely. Emergency power didn't come back on immediately. 5 seconds passed. 10. 15. In the darkness, Jiwoo heard the cubs scrambling toward each other. She heard their rapid breathing, heard claws scraping on metal. Then she heard something else. A small frightened sound that was quickly cut off. The lights flickered back on. All 3 cubs were pressed together in a tight ball, their eyes reflecting the emergency lighting like mirrors. They were shaking. "Come here," Jiwoo said softly. She moved to one of the larger sleep pods and activated it. The pod expanded into a soft, cushioned area big enough for all of them. "It's more comfortable over here." "We do not need comfort," Tovan said. But his voice cracked on the last word. "I need comfort," Jiwoo admitted. "I'm scared. Would you sit with me so I'm not alone?" This seemed to confuse the cubs. They exchanged glances, some kind of silent communication passing between them. Finally, Rika moved first. She approached the pod carefully and climbed in. The soft material compressed under her weight. She looked surprised at how comfortable it was. Sevik followed his sister. Tovan stayed where he was for another minute, pride and fear warring in his expression. Then another tremor shook the station and he gave in. He climbed into the pod but positioned himself between Jiwoo and his siblings, still protecting them even while seeking comfort himself. "Can you tell us more stories about humans?" Rika asked. She had curled up close to Jiwoo, closer than Jiwoo would have thought possible for a predator species. "What would you like to know?" "Why do humans protect things weaker than themselves?" Sevik asked. "Mother says your species wastes resources on the sick and old. She says you even protect animals that cannot help you." Jiwoo thought about how to answer. The storm provided another loud rumble, and she felt all 3 cubs tense against her. She was suddenly very aware of their claws, their teeth, their strength. They could hurt her so easily. But they didn't, they were just scared children. "Let me tell you about a human named Bora," Jiwoo said. "This is a true story. Bora was a scientist who studied tigers. Do you know what tigers are?" The cubs shook their heads. "They're big cats from Earth, predators like you. Very strong, very dangerous. They were almost extinct, which means there were almost none left. Bora spent her whole life protecting them." "Why?" Tovan asked. "If they were dangerous, why not let them die?" "Because they were beautiful. Because they were important. Because the world is better with tigers in it." Jiwoo adjusted her position and the cubs shifted with her. Bora went into the forest where the tigers lived. She tracked them and studied them. She was afraid every single day, but she kept going back. "That is foolish," Tovan said, but he was listening intently. One day Bora found a tiger cub caught in a trap. The cub's mother was nearby and she was angry. The mother tiger could have killed Bora easily, but Bora didn't run. She slowly, carefully freed the cub from the trap. She knew she might die. But she couldn't leave the cub suffering. "What happened?" Rika's voice was barely a whisper. The mother tiger watched. She didn't attack. When the cub was free, Bora backed away slowly. The mother came and took her cub. And then something amazing happened. The mother tiger turned back and looked at Bora for a long moment. Then she left peacefully. "The tiger understood," Sevik said. "Yes. Even though they were different species, even though they should have been enemies, they understood each other." The mother knew Bora had helped her cub. The storm reached a new level of intensity. The entire station seemed to groan and twist. Warning lights flashed on every wall. Jiwoo's datapad showed multiple systems going offline. They were in more danger than she'd admitted to the cubs. Bora's voice came through the communication system. She was the medical officer, monitoring life signs from the command center. "Jiwoo, your heart rate just spiked. Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine. Just the storm." "You're scared?" Jiwoo looked at the 3 cubs pressed against her. "Yes, I'm scared." Tovan's head snapped up. He stared at her. "You admit weakness?" "I admit truth. Being scared doesn't mean I'll leave you. It means I understand the danger we're in and I choose to face it anyway." "That is..." Tovan struggled for words. "That is not how prey behaves." "No," Jiwoo agreed. "It's how humans behave. We feel fear, but we don't let it control us." Another massive shudder ran through the station. This time they heard something large breaking in the distance. Alarms blared. The lights went out again, and this time they stayed out longer. In the darkness, Jiwoo felt small bodies pressing closer to her. She heard breathing coming faster. She heard a small whimper that was quickly stifled. "Listen to me," Jiwoo said into the darkness. Her voice was steady even though her hands were shaking. "I'm going to keep the lights on no matter what. And I'm going to stay right here with you until this storm passes. You are not alone. Do you understand?" You are not alone. The emergency lights finally came back on, dimmer than before. The cubs were all looking at her now with expressions she couldn't quite read.
Fear, yes.
But something else too. Something that might have been trust. Tell us another story, Rika said. Please. Jiwoo reached for the book again. Her hands were steady now even though her heart was pounding. She opened to a story about a human child lost in a forest, befriended by wolves who protected her until she found her way home. As she read, the storm continued its assault on the station. But inside the nursery, 4 beings from 2 different worlds huddled together. The human kept reading, her voice never wavering. The cubs listened, their fear slowly giving way to something else. Are there more stories about humans and predators becoming friends? Sevik asked during a quiet moment. Many more. Would you like to hear them? All 3 cubs nodded. Hours passed. Jiwoo's voice grew hoarse, but she kept reading. She told them about people who rescued injured wolves, about scientists who swam with sharks, about a man who lived with bears. She showed them pictures from her book of humans touching dangerous animals, not with fear, but with gentleness. Why do you touch things that could kill you? Tavan finally asked. His voice had lost its challenging edge. Now he just sounded curious. Because sometimes connection is more important than safety, Jiwoo said. Sometimes understanding another being, even a dangerous one, is worth the risk. Rika had fallen asleep against Jiwoo's side. Sevik was fighting to keep his eyes open. Even Tovan looked exhausted, his aggressive posture finally relaxing. You are very strange, Tovan said quietly. But you did not run. You are not prey. No, Jiwoo agreed. I'm not. I'm just someone who believes that keeping the lights on and reading stories is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. The storm began to fade as morning cycle approached. The violent shaking became gentle tremors. The constant alarms quieted. The lights stayed on without flickering. Jiwoo felt the change in the station's vibrations and knew the worst had passed. She was exhausted. Her throat hurt from hours of reading. Her body ached from staying in one position for so long, but she couldn't move. All 3 cubs had fallen asleep around her, their bodies warm and heavy. Rika's head rested on her lap. Sevik was curled against her side. Even Tovan had finally surrendered to sleep, though he'd positioned himself at the edge of the pod, still trying to protect his siblings even in rest. Jiwoo kept the book open in her hands. She didn't want to risk waking them by moving. Through the exhaustion, she felt something unexpected. Pride. She had done this. She had kept 3 frightened children safe and calm through a dangerous storm. It didn't matter that they were aliens. It didn't matter that they were predators. They had needed someone, and she had been there. Her data pad vibrated softly. A message from Hyun appeared. Storm has passed. Talkir ships are returning to dock. Adult Talkir will be coming to collect their cubs. Well done, Jiwoo. Jiwoo looked down at the sleeping cubs. Their faces were peaceful now, no tension, no fear. Their claws had retracted. Their breathing was slow and steady. They looked so much younger in sleep. Not like fierce predators, just like children who had survived a scary night. She heard sounds in the corridor outside. Footsteps, voices, the normal activity of a station returning to life after an emergency. The door to the nursery suddenly burst open. Mira stood in the doorway. The adult Talkir's eyes swept the room, landing on the pod where Jiwoo sat surrounded by sleeping cubs. Mira's expression was unreadable, but her body language spoke of barely controlled emotion. Behind her, 2 other adult Talkir waited. What have you done to them? Mira's voice was low and dangerous. They're sleeping, Jiwoo whispered. Please don't wake them. They had a very difficult night. Why are they touching you? Why are they so close? Mira took a step into the room. Talkir cubs do not seek comfort from prey species. I'm not prey, Jiwoo said quietly. And they were scared. The storm was very bad. I stayed with them. You should have evacuated. You put yourself in danger. I couldn't leave them alone. Mira stared at her for a long moment. The other adult Talkir entered the room now, watching the scene with intense focus. One of them, a male with darker stripes, spoke in the Talkir language. Mira responded sharply. Rika stirred at the sound of her mother's voice. Her eyes opened slowly. For a moment she looked confused, still half in sleep. Then she saw Mira and scrambled to her feet. Mother! Rika rushed to Mira but then stopped halfway. She looked back at Jiwoo, then at her mother again. The thunder was very loud. But Jiwoo kept the lights on. She told us stories. She sang. She what? Mira's voice carried disbelief. She made sounds, music. It was... Rika struggled for words. It made the fear smaller. Sevik woke next, his eyes immediately alert. He assessed the situation quickly, seeing his mother and the other adults. He stood and moved toward them, but like his sister, he paused. We learned about humans, Sevik said. Did you know they hunted animals bigger than themselves? With no claws? They're persistence predators. They never give up. Tovan was the last to wake. He rose slowly, his eyes going from the adults to Jiwoo. His expression was complicated, pride and confusion mixing together. The human stayed, Tovan said to his mother. She was afraid. She told us she was afraid, but she stayed anyway. Mira looked at Jiwoo with an expression that might have been respect or might have been anger. Jiwoo couldn't tell which. The silence stretched out, uncomfortable and heavy. Talkir do not show weakness, Mira finally said. We do not admit fear. You taught them to be soft. No, Jiwoo stood up carefully. Her legs were stiff from sitting so long. I taught them that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. I taught them that being strong enough to protect others is more important than being strong enough to fight. That is not our way. Maybe it could be. Jiwoo moved closer to Mira, though she had to tilt her head back to meet the Talkir's eyes. Your cubs are brilliant. They're curious and brave. They asked questions and listened to stories all night. They supported each other through their fear. That's not weakness. That's strength. The dark-striped male spoke again in Talkir language. Mira responded, her tone sharp. They were clearly arguing. The cubs watched their elders with wide eyes, uncertain. What did they learn from these stories? Mira asked Jiwoo. They learned about humans who faced dangerous animals with respect instead of violence. About people who protected creatures weaker than themselves. About scientists who studied predators to understand them, not to kill them. Jiwoo glanced at the cubs who were listening intently. They learned that different kinds of strength exist in the universe. You make us sound weak. Caring for prey animals is weakness. Is it? Jiwoo surprised herself with the challenge in her voice. Your cubs were terrified last night. Every instinct told them to hide, to fight, to panic. But they didn't. They stayed together. They listened. They let themselves be comforted by someone from another species. That takes strength. That takes courage that your culture doesn't teach. Rika moved back toward Jiwoo. She stood between her mother and the human, an unconscious gesture that spoke volumes. She sang to us when we were scared. She kept reading even when she was tired. She told us humans choose to be kind even when being cruel would be easier. We talked about pack, Tovan added. He wouldn't meet his mother's eyes, but he spoke clearly. Jiwoo said humans form packs with anyone who needs them. Even people who aren't the same as them, even... He paused. Even species that others think are dangerous. Mira went very still. You called her pack? The cubs exchanged glances. Then all three nodded. The other adult Talkir made a sound like a growl. Mira held up one hand, silencing him. She stared at her cubs, then at Jiwoo, then back at her cubs.
Pack is sacred, Mira said softly.
We do not use that word lightly. We do not use it for outsiders. Never for prey species. But humans aren't prey, Rika said. Jiwoo told us. They're persistence predators. They hunted across entire continents. They survived ice and fire and animals that wanted to eat them. They're like us, just different. Hyun appeared in the doorway, slightly out of breath. He must have run when he heard the Talkir had arrived. He looked at the scene, at the cubs standing protectively near Jiwoo, at Mira's conflicted expression. Is everything all right here? Hyun asked carefully. That depends, Mira said. She looked at Jiwoo for a long moment. The storm last night was worse than predicted. Sections of the station were damaged. There was real danger. You chose to stay with cubs that are not your own species. Cubs whose kind has never shown respect to yours. Why? Jiwoo thought about her answer carefully. The cubs were watching her. Hyun was watching her. The future of something important hung on what she said next. Because they needed someone, Jiwoo said simply. Because they were scared and alone, and I couldn't leave them like that. It doesn't matter that we're different species. Fear is fear. Need is need. And children are children no matter what shape they come in. Mira closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, Something had changed in her expression. You risked your life for our cubs. Yes. You gave them comfort when their own culture forbids them from seeking it. I gave them what they needed, not what tradition demanded. And now they call you Pack. Jiwoo looked at the three cubs. They were watching her with eyes that held something new. Not fear, not suspicion. Something warmer. I'm honored if they do. Mira made a decision. Jiwoo could see it happen, could see the moment when something fundamental shifted in the Talkir's thinking. You will continue teaching them. What? The dark-striped male protested in Talkir language. You will teach them, Mira repeated, her eyes still on Jiwoo. About humans, about your way of seeing strength, about protecting the weak and forming packs with those different from yourself. She stepped closer to Jiwoo and spoke very softly, so only Jiwoo could hear. You showed my cubs something we have forgotten. You showed them that admitting fear does not make you weak. That staying when you could flee is true courage. I do not fully understand your kind, but I see what you did last night. I see how my cubs look at you now. Mira straightened and spoke louder, addressing Hyun. The Talkir will continue this education program. Our cubs will learn from this human. And we will learn what it means that our fiercest young ones now call a persistence predator their pack. 1 month passed. The damage from the storm had been repaired. Veiled Haven Station returned to its normal routines, though some things had changed in ways that couldn't be easily measured. Jiwoo stood at the observation window again, watching ships come and go. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of her classroom. Laughter, questions, the clicking sounds of Talkir speech mixed with human words and the whistling language of the Oran species. Teacher Jiwoo, Rika called. Sevik says humans couldn't really hunt animals as big as our warships. Tell him about the whales. Jiwoo turned from the window and smiled. Her classroom had grown. After word spread about the night of the storm, more Talkir families had requested placement in her program. Now she had 7 cubs ranging in age from 4 to 8 in human years. They sat in a circle on the floor, their attention focused on a holographic display showing Earth's oceans. Humans didn't hunt whales with weapons at first, Jiwoo explained, moving to join the circle. They used small boats made of wood and bone. The whales were many times bigger than the boats, but humans were patient and clever. A new cub, a male named Juan, raised one clawed hand. Why hunt something so big? Why not hunt smaller prey that's easier? Because the whales provided food, oil, and materials that could support entire communities through harsh winters. One whale could keep many people alive. Tovan, who now sat closest to Jiwoo in every class, spoke up. Like how our hunting ships take down the great stellar beasts. We do it for resources to support the fleet. Exactly like that, Jiwoo agreed. The door opened and Hyun entered, followed by a Talkir that Jiwoo had never seen before. This one was older than Mira, with silver fur marked by scars that spoke of many battles. The cubs immediately rose and bowed their heads, a gesture of deep respect. Ambassador Velcro, they said in unison. Jiwoo stood as well, uncertain of the protocol. An ambassador. She'd heard the name before. Velcro was one of the most powerful Talkir in their government, responsible for all diplomatic relations with other species. Please continue your lesson, Velcro said. Her voice was rough, like stones grinding together. I have come to observe. The cubs returned to their seats, but they were more subdued now, very aware of the important visitor. Jiwoo felt her heart beating faster. She knew this moment mattered, though she wasn't sure exactly how. We were discussing persistence hunting, Jiwoo said. She kept her voice calm. How humans used patience and endurance to catch prey that was faster or stronger than they were. Show me, Velcro said. She settled herself near the wall, her large body somehow making itself smaller, less threatening. The cubs relaxed slightly. Jiwoo returned to the lesson. She showed videos of humans tracking animals across vast distances. She explained how human bodies could regulate temperature through sweating, allowing them to run for hours without stopping while their prey had to rest. So humans make other animals tired, then catch them when they can't run anymore? Juan asked. Yes, it's not about being the strongest or fastest. It's about never giving up. Velcro watched in silence. Her eyes tracked everything. The cubs' reactions. How Jiwoo moved and spoke. The way the cubs asked questions without fear. After the lesson ended, Hyun guided the cubs to another instructor for their next class. Only Jiwoo and Velcro remained in the room. "You are the human who stayed during the storm," Velcro said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, Ambassador." "The reports I received were interesting. 3 cubs trapped in a damaged station with a prey species teacher. By all predictions, they should have been traumatized. Instead, they returned to their parents speaking of pack bonds and singing and stories about humans befriending predators." Jiwoo wasn't sure if this was a criticism or not. They were frightened. "I did what I could to help them feel safe." "You did more than that." Velcro moved closer and Jiwoo had to resist the urge to step back. The ambassador was even larger than Mira, easily 7.5 feet tall with muscles that spoke of a lifetime of combat. "You changed them." Tovan's mother reports that he now asks questions instead of simply obeying. Rika wants to study other species instead of training as a warrior. Sevik told his father that courage means admitting fear. Is that bad?" Jiwoo asked carefully. "I do not know yet." Velcro sat down, her movements precise and controlled. "Tell me, human, what did you do during those hours in the storm?" Jiwoo sat down as well, though she chose a position that let her watch the door. Old instincts. "I read to them. I told them stories about humans and animals. I sang when they were too frightened to listen to words anymore. I kept the lights on because darkness made everything worse." "You admitted your own fear to them?" "Yes." "Why?" Jiwoo thought about her answer. "Because they needed to know it was okay to be scared. Your culture teaches them to hide fear, to see it as weakness, but fear is information. It tells us when we're in danger. Ignoring it doesn't make you brave. It makes you reckless, and yet you stayed when you could have evacuated. Because leaving them alone would have been wrong. They were children. They needed an adult." Velcro made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You speak as if that is simple. As if your decision was obvious." "It was obvious. Maybe not simple, but obvious. You risked your life for cubs that were not your species, not your pack, not your responsibility. They became my responsibility the moment their parents trusted me with them." Velcro studied Jiwoo for a long moment. "I came here expecting to find a human seeking glory or political advantage. Someone who stayed with our cubs to gain favor with our people. That's not why I stayed. I know. That is what troubles me." Velcro shifted her position and Jiwoo noticed for the first time that the ambassador looked tired. "For 300 generations, the Talkir have built our society on strength through conflict. The weak do not survive. Compassion is seen as a flaw. Showing fear is shameful. And yet our cubs spent one night with you and returned changed. They ask questions we do not want to answer. They challenge traditions we thought unshakable. I'm sorry if I do not apologize." Velcro's voice was firm. "I did not say it was bad. I said it troubles me. Because it forces us to examine our own culture. Your species is smaller than ours, weaker. By every measure we use, you should be prey. And yet you do things we thought impossible." Jiwoo waited. She sensed there was more. "I have studied humans since the storm," Velcro continued. "I learned that your species forms bonds with animals that could kill you. You keep carnivores in your homes as companions. You rescue injured predators and nurse them back to health. You build sanctuaries for creatures that would eat you if they were hungry. This makes no sense to us. We see potential friends, not just threats." "Yes, and that is a kind of strength we never considered." Velcro stood, and Jiwoo stood as well. "I am here to propose something that will be controversial among my people. We want to expand this program. We want more of our cubs to learn from human teachers. Not combat skills. Not technology. We want them to learn this thing you call empathy." Jiwoo felt her breath catch. That's a significant change. "Yes, there is opposition. Many Talkir believe we are softening our young, making them weak. But I've spoken with Mira and the other parents whose cubs were here during the storm. Their children are not weak. They are different. They still train as warriors. They still honor our traditions. But they also ask why now. They consider the cost of violence. They wonder if strength can take different forms. What do you need from me? Continue teaching. Show more of our cubs what you showed Tovan, Rika, and Sevik. Help us understand how your species can be both predator and protector, warrior and caregiver." Velcro moved toward the door, then paused. "I am told you sang to them. Is this true?" "Yes, it was a lullaby. A song my mother sang to me. Would you teach our cubs to sing?" The question surprised Jiwoo. Yes, if you want me to. I do. Because in 300 generations of Talkir history, we have never thought to comfort our young with music. We have never thought to admit fear so that children feel safe admitting their own. We have never stayed with frightened cubs just to keep them company in the dark. Velkra's eyes met Jiwoo's. You did all of this in one night. Without weapons. Without violence. Just stories and songs and keeping the lights on. That is a kind of power we need to understand. After Velkra left, Jiwoo stood alone in her classroom for a long moment. The weight of what had been asked of her settled on her shoulders. She thought about that night during the storm, how frightened she had been, how simple her actions seemed at the time. The door opened again. Wonsik entered. Another human teacher who worked in a different wing of the station. He looked excited. Did you hear? Wonsik asked. The Talkir are requesting human teachers for 12 new stations. They're calling it the Persistence Predator Initiative. They want us to teach their cubs about empathy and emotional intelligence. I heard, Jiwoo said quietly. This is huge. We're changing their entire culture, all because you stayed with those cubs during the storm. Jiwoo shook her head. I didn't change anything. I just couldn't let children be afraid alone. That's exactly my point. You did what came naturally to you, and it revolutionized how an entire species thinks about strength. Jiwoo stood at the observation window of Veiled Haven Station and watched the stars. She had been on the station for 3 days now, and still couldn't believe she was really here. A human teacher on a diplomatic station filled with aliens from across the galaxy. Her reflection looked back at her from the glass, a small woman with tired eyes and nervous hands. Behind her, the door opened with a soft hiss. Hyun walked in carrying a datapad. He was her supervisor, another human who had been on the station for 5 years. He looked worried. We need to talk about your new assignment, Hyun said. He didn't sit down. That was a bad sign. Jiwoo turned away from the window. What's wrong? The Talkir cubs are arriving tomorrow. Their parents want them in the xenobiology education program. Hyun handed her the datapad. You'll be their primary teacher. Jiwoo looked at the screen. The images showed creatures that made her stomach tighten with fear. The Talkir cubs were already as large as human children, but they had claws like knives and teeth designed for tearing meat. Their eyes were positioned forward on their faces, the mark of a predator species. They're children, Jiwoo said quietly. She had spent years studying child development across different species. She knew that young minds were similar in many ways, no matter what body they lived in. They're predators, Hyun replied. Their species has never let another race teach their young before. The adult Talkir think we're prey animals, weak. They don't trust us. Then why are they sending their cubs here? Hyun sighed and sat down. Politics. The Talkir want better trade agreements with the coalition. This is their way of showing good faith. But Jiwoo, you need to understand something. These aren't like the other species you've worked with. The Talkir raise their young to be warriors. They don't show weakness. They don't show fear. Jiwoo studied the images again. In one picture, a cub was practicing with what looked like weapons. In another, several cubs were engaged in what the caption called dominance training. But in the corner of that second image, she noticed something. One cub sat apart from the others, watching with large eyes that seemed uncertain. When do they arrive? She asked. Tomorrow morning. I'll be honest with you. I don't think this is a good idea. But you're the best childhood development specialist we have. If anyone can make this work, it's you. That night, Jiwoo couldn't sleep. She read everything she could find about the Talkir. They were apex predators from a world with twice Earth's gravity. Their society was built on strength and hunting prowess. They had joined the galactic community only 30 years ago and remained largely isolated. Cubs were raised in groups, learning to fight from the moment they could walk. Weakness was not tolerated. The information terrified her. But beneath her fear, Jiwoo felt something else. Curiosity. What were these children really like when no one was watching? What did they dream about? What made them laugh? The next morning came too quickly. Jiwoo prepared the classroom in the xenobiology wing. She had set up different stations with learning materials adapted for various species. Now she rearranged everything to be sturdier. The Talkir cubs would be stronger than human children. The door opened and Mira entered. She was an adult Talkir, nearly 7 feet tall with silver-gray fur marked with black stripes. Her claws clicked on the metal floor. Behind her came 3 cubs. "This is the human." Mira's voice was deep and carried an edge like a growl. "Yes, I'm Jiwoo. Welcome to... I do not care what you are called." Mira's eyes, golden and cold, fixed on her. "You will watch my cubs while they are here. You will keep them safe. If anything happens to them, your species will answer for it." The 3 cubs entered the room cautiously. The largest, a male, immediately began inspecting the space with suspicious eyes. A female cub, smaller than the others, stayed close to Mira. The 3rd cub, another male, sniffed the air and looked directly at Jiwoo. "This is Tovan, Rika, and Sevik," Mira said, indicating each cub. "They are here to learn about other species. They are not here to become soft." "I understand," Jiwoo said softly. She knelt down to be at the cub's eye level. All 3 watched her with intense focus. "Hello, I'm glad you're here." Rika took a small step forward, then stopped when Tovan growled softly at her. Sevik continued to stare at Jiwoo with unblinking eyes. Mira spoke to the cubs in their own language, a series of clicks and low sounds. Then she left without another word to Jiwoo. For a long moment, nobody moved. Jiwoo stayed kneeling. The cubs watched her. She could hear their breathing, could see their muscles tensed and ready. They were waiting to see what she would do. "Would you like to see what we'll be learning about?" Jiwoo asked. She stood slowly and moved to one of the stations. "This is a display showing different planets. Each one has different kinds of life." Tovan approached first, his walk careful and precise. He looked at the display, then at Jiwoo. "What kind of predator are you?" he asked. His voice was higher than his mother's, but still had that growling quality. "Humans are persistence hunters," Jiwoo said. "We're not the strongest or fastest, but we don't give up." "That is prey behavior," Tovan said. "Running away?" "No," Jiwoo replied. "We follow our prey until it gets tired. We can run for hours, days even. We follow until the prey can't run anymore." This seemed to interest all 3 cubs. They moved closer to the display. Rika reached out one clawed hand to touch the holographic image of Earth. "Is this your world?" she asked. "Yes, would you like to see the animals that live there?" For the next few hours, Jiwoo showed them Earth's wildlife. She explained about lions and tigers, about sharks and crocodiles. But she also showed them wolves and how they hunted in packs. She showed them videos of humans long ago, hunting animals much larger than themselves. Sevik watched everything with intense focus. "Your species hunts animals bigger than you?" "We used to, yes. Before we had technology." "How?" Tovan demanded. "You have no claws, no sharp teeth. We use tools, and we work together, and we're very patient." The cubs seemed to consider this. They were still cautious around her, still ready to react if she made any threatening move. But they were curious too. Then the alarm sounded. All 3 cubs immediately dropped into defensive positions, their bodies low and ready to spring. Jiwoo's datapad lit up with an emergency message from Hyun. "Cosmic storm incoming. All personnel to stations. This is not a drill." Jiwoo looked at the cubs. They were staring at her, waiting to see what the adult would do. Their ears were flat against their heads. She realized with surprise that they were scared. The station's lights flickered. In the distance, they could hear a deep rumbling sound. The storm was already beginning to affect the station's hull. Thunder, Jiwoo thought. They're hearing thunder for the first time. "It's going to be okay," she said, keeping her voice calm. "Stay with me. I'll keep you safe." Tovan's eyes narrowed. Telekir do not need prey species to protect them. But his voice shook just slightly when he said it. The lights flickered again, and this time they went out completely for 3 long seconds before the emergency systems kicked in. In that darkness, Jiwoo heard a small sound that might have been a whimper. When the lights came back on, all 3 cubs had moved closer together, and they were all looking at her with wide, frightened eyes that they were trying very hard to hide.